So we explored specificity in the last lecture. You had that slide where I showed it to you. And with that, it's clear why the second text is actually green and why it is sans serif. Now let's get rid of that sans serif style here, the h1 tag. We don't need it, I'll comment it out. And if I now reload it, we got Anton back. We still have the green color because of that specificity thing. Now there is something else related to all of that, and this is called inheritance. Now inheritance means that an element also inherits some styles of the parent element. We don't use inheritance in our project yet, so let's add it to the project. And let's add it by setting a global default font so that the text in our project has a global font. I actually don't want to use Anton for all the h1 tags, and therefore, to ensure that this and other texts on the page, and we will add more text, have a different font, we should set up a global rule. Now for one, we could of course add the star selector to give any element a certain look. There we could set a font family of sans serif like this, and if we save this and reload, well, you would see we still have Anton here because the h1 tag comes second. So let's move the star selector after the h1 tag and save and reload. And we still have Anton because if we inspect it, we see the star selector has the lowest priority. Now this actually is something which would not be the problem here. The problem with the star selector is that it's very inefficient the way CSS has now to parse all our elements on the screen. So we will use it, but not for a global font family. For that, you instead typically use something different. You style the body. Keep in mind, the body wraps all your other content, so if you set a certain style on the body, maybe it will also change the style of your other elements. So for the body, we can set a font family. And actually, I don't want to use sans serif, but another Google font, so let's quickly head there. And I want to use Montserrat. Simply click on the plus again, then expand this. And here I'll quickly also go to Customize and add the bold version of the font by clicking bold. And if I now go back to embed, here's the adjusted import. Simply grab that link, go back to your project, and add it below or in front of the other font import. And now we can use that font family here too. So let's copy that rule. Let's close the tab. And in main CSS, I'll assign this to my body. Now if we save this and reload, again, no change. However, this is a better way of doing this because it's more efficient. And theoretically, it would get applied to that h1 style here. If you scroll down in the applied styles and you go below the browser default, you will actually see that inherited from body section. And elements inherit styles from their parents, direct or indirect parents, and not just from the body. The body clearly is no direct parent of h1, but it is a parent in the chain of elements here. And therefore, some styles, not all, there are exceptions, but we'll dive into this later. Some styles, especially the font-related styles, are passed down to childs. However, inheritance has a very low specificity. Inheritance always comes at the bottom, even below the browser defaults. Put in other words, styles that are applied because an element is selected directly, be that through an element selector, a class selector, an ID selector, the universal selector, an attribute selector. Whenever you directly select an element, this has a higher specificity than inheritance, where you don't directly select an element. However, if we were to add a paragraph here in the index.html file, maybe in the second section below the h1 tag, where we say make sure you get the most for your money, if we add this and now reload the page, and we inspect this paragraph, you actually see it does have that style being applied. It's not strike through, it's not overwritten, and therefore Montserrat is applied here. And you can check this by quickly ticking this style off by clicking the checkbox. Now it changed back to times to the browser default, and now it's back to Montserrat. So inheritance is an important concept for passing styles down without explicitly selecting an element. And especially for things like font sizes, font families, this is extremely useful because you typically want to have one and the same style for the majority of your text on your screen. And therefore, setting this up in the body section is a great way, as it will then make sure you can use inheritance. Again, that's not limited to the body section. It works with any parent, but if you want to have it for the entire page, the body section obviously is a great place. Important though, inheritance works, but any direct selector has a higher specificity and therefore will override your inheritance if it defines the same property as we do here with the font family Anton on the h1 tag.